Welcome to Strength in the Numbers. My name is Andrew Codd, accountant, author, and commercial finance entrepreneur, and it's my job each week to bring you leaders in finance and business and deconstruct with them their real stories, insights, and hard-won lessons into practical advice on the key strengths and qualities you need to remain relevant in accounting and finance today, as well as the steps you can begin to take to elevate the impact you make to have a fun, successful, and rewarding career in accounting and finance. Now let's go over to the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Strength in the Numbers show. Now some of you, like myself, might have wondered, could we be doing more to leverage younger talent in finance to unlock more value in our organisations? I mean, it's easy for those of us who've been around finance and the business for a long time to maybe get stuck in our ways a bit in terms of how we work. But if you think about it, younger, fresher minds may not have similar limiting beliefs or constraints as to what's possible or what's not, particularly around the new technologies that they've grown up with, and even maybe that key to unlocking even higher levels of value in finance and drive our organisations even more forward. So look, this is just one of the many topics our guest mentor today, Marcus Thelwell, and I cover on this week's episode. Marcus also deconstructs for us things that new entrants to finance can do immediately to start unlocking value for our organisations, why we need to be more than your stereotypical accountant image, and the main things new entrants should be interested in to get a bigger return on their investment in a career in accounting and finance. Also, Marcus shares a great example of how to keep finance professionals motivated that we can all do, particularly given that it's our younger professionals running the more mundane, not so fun tasks and processes, and also how just having conversations with folks can identify common interest and boost our career success. So if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to let your friends and your colleagues know about it. We're on all the major platforms: YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and iTunes. And if you do want to check out the show notes, how to connect with Marcus, some of the key quotes, then head over to our website, sitnshow.com/podcast. So really appreciate you investing your time with us today. So without further ado, over to Marcus and the show. Marcus, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Marcus, we've had a few exchanges on Messenger before the podcast, and I really appreciate you coming in, given that you've just done a half Ironman as well. So congratulations, well done. To ease you into it, maybe could you share with us your journey in accounting finance with our audience?
Sure. I started university in Manchester in 2006 doing a business management degree, which lasted 4 years. And it started off quite generalist, touching on all parts of business. And then over time, it needed to be a bit more focused. And although I have more of a creative background in the sense that I'm interested in music, I play instruments and write music, I was also interested in numbers, which isn't a typical pairing of interests. So towards the end of my degree, I started looking more at finance and accounting topics. Once I graduated from university, I joined, or I was lucky enough to join Deloitte Consulting in London. And I joined their consulting finance practice looking at performance management. So that was largely related to systems and data. I worked on kind of large implementations of performance management systems across many different companies and industries across Europe, which was quite exciting at the time because I worked with a lot of different companies and I got to travel quite a lot, which in my early 20s was really fun and exciting. So that's where I started to apply my kind of technical finance knowledge, but also started to learn about systems and data and the more technical aspects of finance. Although that was really interesting and I'm glad I did it, I was naturally more driven towards the kind of more strategic elements of finance. So I actually moved teams 3 years later after I started to the strategic finance function, which looked at more like operating models, and FP&A was more of a theme. So I started looking at more reporting processes, how stakeholders in the business can use analysis, dynamic reports, and use data to drive decisions, which is more getting into the whole finance business partnering side of things. And that was much more suited to me. And because I had that technical background, I was able to kind of jump between conversations of what the business wanted and what was technically possible from a kind of IT systems perspective. After 5 years of working in London, I was asked for a new challenge. And so I moved to Sydney with my work, again, into the finance consulting area, where I worked with some New South Wales state government clients. And I've recently moved into an internal role, which is focusing on internal transformation. So that is partnering with the actual partners of the business to actually change the way that we deliver work to our clients. So that's informing partners of the business, of the financials, of what we're selling, also coming up with new ways of working. So instead of just putting our people on projects, which is time and materials related, it's actually how can we develop new solutions involving technology, data visualizations, to actually drive different forms of revenue in the business.
I suppose as a profession, from a practice perspective, that's definitely where it goes. It's much more a pricing value type approach, and it's what our customers and clients are looking for. So look, really appreciate that introduction, Marcus. There's a few things in there I'd love to unpick a bit more with you, but I suppose relative to our previous guest mentors, you're one of our younger guests, but you're seeing an awful lot going on. And one of the main reasons why I really wanted you on the show and really excited to bring you on was that, you've been sharing your thoughts with, I suppose, university graduates, trying to figure out whether or not a finance career is what they should expect. And I suppose in terms of your journey yourself, what would you be advising them at the moment? What should they be looking out for, or what should they be doing as they enter this world of finance?
Sure. So I think traditionally, new people entering finance and accounting would be very technically good with numbers and would often be quite introverted. I mean, it's well known that there's a stereotype behind accountants that is still fixed in the industry. But now people need to be a lot more than that. So the technical aspect of accounting is almost like a given. So whether that's through a degree or whether that's through an additional academic qualification, such as chartered accountants or CIMA or CPA. So that should be made standard. But people coming into the industry need to be interested in either technology that supports finance, the data aspects, or they need to be interested in the actual business they're working in. And if they're interested in the business they're working with and how the business, they need to have that kind of commerciality element, and they need to be able to represent those soft skills, being a people person. They need to be curious. They need to ask questions. They need to, as you mentioned, be able to get out from behind their desks and get into the business.
Yeah, I completely support what you're saying there. I think it's generally, that's the price. We're already given our technical skills. It's the price of entry. So we're going to have acquired some of those. Where we need to think about is definitely either on a more technical data type track, which I would sort of say helps drives our impact, or how we go and engage and have those softer skills to partner with the business and be their sparring partner and being comfortable in those areas. And I think there's definitely room for both along the way, in terms of, I suppose, using those to unlock value in the business. Is there sort of any things we can deconstruct for our listeners to help them on that journey as new finance professionals to unlock value in the business?
Sure. So I think knowing your business, or knowing the business that you work in really well, is key. Knowing what your stakeholders are interested in is key, because often in clients, maybe 80 to 90% of the work that finance departments do is either not of interest to the business, whether that's through putting reports together that have always been put together for years, whether that's consolidating different data sets and numbers. I think a lot of the time people in finance and accounting are doing those tasks because they are part of their working day schedules and always have been. What they haven't done is actually look at the bigger picture of what they're doing and be like, what is it that the business is looking for from the information that I'm providing them? Is this information hitting the mark in terms of the decisions that are being made? I think a lot of the time as finance practitioners, we're waiting for the business to come to us asking what they want. But actually, it should be the other way around, where we continually test and ask questions of the business in terms of what they want, because I think often we expect the business to know what they want, and they don't until they actually see something that's really useful, and that's when they'll go, actually, that's really useful. Can we have more of that information, please?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. That last piece there, Marcus, because that's probably an assumption. You're new to a career, right? You'd expect the business to know what they need to know, right? But that's so true. I mean, and I've seen that in my career many times. It's it's an assumption I think a lot of us have. How do we make sure our new entrants don't just naturally assume that the business already has what they need? How can we snap out of that, or is there any things we can do to in effect get over that hurdle and start to be adding more value, unlocking more value for them?
Sure. I think trying to instill a culture of just inquisitiveness and curiosity about what it is that we're doing on a daily basis is really important. And providing the room for younger people, especially, to be able to put forward new ideas or new ways of working on what we're doing. I think often we find that people who've been in a business a long time can kind of get stuck in their ways a lot in terms of how they work. And actually, younger minds, younger objective minds, without the constraints of kind of what's possible and what's not, we should be kind of utilizing these new ideas and how they see the world, especially with new technology and new ways of working. A lot of the time, young people are kind of coding for fun, but older, more senior people in the business wouldn't know what coding is or what it's capable of. And actually, like, the changes are so drastic now that we should actually start listening to younger people who have exposure and an interest in these new ways of working, because the capability and possibility of the time efficiencies are just enormous, especially for the finance and accounting part of the business.
Yeah, I agree. That's great advice. I was just going with that time and efficiency angle. You made a point earlier, I suppose a lot of our work we do is necessary to get the insights out to make an impact, but it's not necessarily what our business partners, our customers, are willing to pay for. I suppose, do you ever how do you get your head around that? You're new to the career, right? And you're expected to do work that ultimately the customer probably wouldn't pay for. How do you stay motivated? That a lot of our work in terms of data collection, cleaning, trying to, I suppose, ascertain what it is that we're trying to report, get the reports out. A lot of that the customers probably wouldn't pay for, or our clients wouldn't really pay for. So, that seems like dead time, and it may seem like non-value add time, but it's a necessary step we have to go through. Or it's maybe just, it's been always the way it's been done in finance. And it can be quite demotivating. So I'm just trying to think, how do we get our heads around that to keep with it, so that once we go through that, we're adding value or unlocking value in the business?
Yep. So I think, especially for new people, even if we set the challenge to them, so they've got a finance process to run, whether it's putting together a report.
Yeah.
If I was a manager, I would say to them, I'll set you a challenge. If you can improve the efficiency of this process from 5 days to 4 days, then you can have that extra day to look into something within finance that you're interested in, or something in the business that you'd like to learn about, to get to know, and almost set the challenge down themselves, and give them the opportunity to actually critically think about the process they're putting together, and actually come up with suggestions on how to improve. And then once you find those efficiencies, actually then reinvesting it back to actually support something else which could improve additional value to the business.
In effect, I think what you suggested there is you actually made it goal orientated. So rather than look at it as a problem, we're doing all this work for it doesn't seem much in the way of return. It's actually, you know what, let's have a good, positive, constructive goal around this, so I can get to work on the things that the customer might matter to the customers and the clients.
Exactly. And I think from a mindset perspective, for someone's new into finance, people want to have purpose. People want to be challenged. People don't want to do the same things every day. People don't want to be criticized. People want to have the room to grow. So I think it's the framing of problems into kind of productive challenges is something that I have definitely had a positive reaction to, and the people around me have as well.
Yeah, no, that's spot on, Marcus. Great advice. And you know, I'm going to pick your mind for more advice now, I suppose, in terms of getting to know the business really well and what's interesting stakeholders. Do you have perhaps any advice you can share, that the steps we can take to help ourselves on that journey?
Sure. I think actually just forgetting about finance and accounting for a minute. I think just being able to have a conversation with someone about, and just to try and find that common interest that you might have with anybody in the business. So, for example, I remember my final interview for my graduate program. It was actually mainly about football, and the reason why it's about football is I actually support a team called Shrewsbury Town, which is in the third league of English football, and he happened to support Barnet, which is in the third league in North London, and they had a fixture coming up that weekend, and we spent the whole of that interview talking about the form of the team, what football grounds we've been to, what our predictions are for where our teams will finish in the league. And from there, he actually became that person who interviewed me became a bit of an informal mentor for me in my career for the next few years, and that was purely based off a common interest and actually nothing to do with finance and accounting. So actually, my advice would be get out there, meet people, and talk to people about just things that you're interested in or passionate about, and actually have a conversation about it. And if you can establish that baseline relationship, then things become much easier for your actual job and work from a finance and accounting perspective.
Yeah, I like that, Marcus. Yeah, just forget about finance and accounting for a bit and just go and be a human being and have a conversation and see where it goes.
Exactly.
Love it. And I suppose then, in terms of where you are now, Marcus, what's exciting you most about your current work?
So I've recently, as mentioned, taken an internal role, which is looking at the ways that we deliver work to our clients. So we recognize as a company, from a strategic perspective, that we cannot continue to do things the way that they've always been done, because there is so much change happening in all industries from a technical, digital perspective, that we want to actually become the disruptors of the industry, as opposed to just doing things as normal, and our industries then becoming disrupted ourselves. So I'm really lucky enough to be on the front line of how technologies and automations are being, one, assessed, opportunities within the business to be identified, and then kind of prototypes to be built either with automations or different technologies, to see if those efficiencies that we all read about in terms of what automations can do are actually possible. And from actually working in it and being in it, it is not as clear cut as you may read from a theoretical perspective in all the many articles there is. There is a lot of times that automations do not work. There's a lot of times that they do not have the efficiencies and time savings that are often put forward. But I do see the development and the advancement of these technologies on a daily basis, and I have no doubt in a few years that they will start delivering on the kind of efficiencies that we all read about right now. And I don't think it's something we should be scared of or worried about, but we are starting to look at the kind of makeup of our teams in terms of the skills that we have. And although like being an accountant is fundamental still to our business, we are also starting to branch out now in terms of, well, you can't just be an accountant. You know, technical skills are really important. Having that really business expertise is really important. And we're not saying that you have to have all of these, but you fundamentally need to either be really into the technical side or really into the business side, as well as having those core accounting skills.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Actually, and you know what? I really appreciate you calling out the fact that some of these technological projects around automation, they're not working. But this is just the part of where we are. When it comes to disruption, there will be successes and there will be failures. It's all part of figuring it out. And then, you know, sometimes that technology, it's to do with, I don't know, perhaps culture or whatever. And then you've also mentioned the skills as well. I completely agree with you. I want to reinforce, I don't think people in our profession need to feel they have to be able to do it all. It's all about, you know, finding other human beings that we can complement our skills with. So if one of us is more technologically enabled, and we're partnered or paired up with someone who is perhaps able to go and have a good sparring partner type conversation with a customer or a client, then I think that's a very good mix to have in the team, you know, because there are other people out there that can complement each other. So, but it's important, that said, we have to do a little bit extra, as one of our previous mentors said, you know, what's our extra? Is it, do we bring extra technological skills or data skills, or do we bring more business partnering skills and mindsets? So I suppose in terms of yourself, Marcus, any advice in terms of what you're picking up in sort of the knowledge you're gaining in the area you're working at the moment that you could also share with our audience in terms of the skills or the technological or the data aspects?
Sure. So because I started from the technology side in finance in terms of systems, I was able to kind of, I can understand the concepts of how kind of databases and how data flows through systems and how it needs to be treated before it is ultimately analyzed and insights are taken from it. Now, I would not claim to be a technical expert. I think that kind of early understanding was really helpful. So I would advise or recommend, even if you're technical or not, just to have a read of some information in terms of how the systems work, just from a purely conceptual perspective, and just to get that base level understanding. And I think online now, I think LinkedIn do kind of open learning sessions on this kind of thing. So I really recommend people to take that on.
That's really a good one, because it's the early learnings in effect you're getting from your area and the advice back. You know, that's a great one. And by the way, on that one, Marcus, I want to reiterate, I found that very useful as well for figuring out where this perhaps we can use our technical accounting skills and controllership skills to improve value. Because if we get a conceptual idea in our minds and get it onto paper, the end to end, again, that's that assumption. These things, people just assume they're in place, but a lot of these processes we look at and systems were just put together just to meet on the fly, to put business needs. So probably someone, no, I'm not saying that they should have been documented, but maybe no one's had the opportunity or time to put into conceptually stacking it up end to end. And you know, in terms of unlocking value, one way of unlocking value is one, reducing the risk of a system, or two, trying to reduce leakage within a system of things that are happening that shouldn't be happening. and capturing cash flows, then that will then flow to the bottom line. So I do think that that's a very good bit of advice that
Yep.
some of us overlook. We assume it's there and it's not, and we understand the system, and then we become more of an expert in that understanding, and we can do something with it. That's a great advice.
Yes, no, exactly. And I've often in my career had to draw out end-to-end processes of how I think data flows through the various systems ultimately to the end customer. And if I can get that onto one page, I can then easily
Yes.
kind of pinpoint very easily where I think the pain points, bottlenecks, or important areas of focus and investigation need to be moving forward.
Yeah, that's great advice, Marcus. No, I really appreciate you sharing that one. Look, I can't believe the time's flying. I do want to sort of throw some rapid fire questions at you. I suppose in terms of, you've been giving us great advice. And I suppose in terms of yourself, Marcus, what's been the best bit of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice I've ever received is be inquisitive and expose yourself to as many different ways of working, especially in your early career, as possible. I think people will ultimately have a view of where they think their career should go. But until you experience it, you won't really know what you like and don't like. And I've been surprised a number of times in my career that I've actually quite liked something that I didn't think I would like at all, and actually didn't like something that I thought I would really like. So especially in your early part, be inquisitive and try and expose yourself to as much as possible.
Okay, I feel like there's a story in there, Marcus. I'm going to ask you. So could you mind sharing what you liked or didn't like?
I didn't think I would like presenting in front of big stakeholders or in a meeting, purely because as a kind of young entrant into finance and accounting, you're kind of put on the more kind of mundane tasks. Through fluke and chance, I think 3 levels of management happened to be away on the same day, and I was the only one left who could do this particular presentation, which I was very scared about. But because of the advice I mentioned around being inquisitive and trying to expose yourself to as much as possible, I forced myself to do it. And actually, I really enjoyed that meeting, and I think the stakeholders appreciated, although I was quite junior at the time, the way I came across. And it gave me the kind of foundations of being that kind of more people-centric business partner. And that's where my kind of curiosity started around finance business partnering and working with the business. So that was a prime example of something that I thought I wouldn't like, and actually has kind of set the foundations to where my career is heading now.
Isn't that brilliant? It's probably something you would never have probably actively chosen to do, and then you found that that's pretty damn good. Like it's not so bad.
Exactly.
And it's helped your career, so that's fantastic. And I suppose then in terms of resources you found along your journey so far, is there any you could perhaps recommend our audience?
Sure. So where I've found kind of my inspiration outside of work is when I worked in London, I took the SEMA qualification, which is a management accounting qualification, and I tried to attend as many of the kind of events that they would put on as possible, whether they were kind of networking events or whether they were events related to new trends, new technologies. So I tried to go to as many of those as possible, not just to learn about the industry and what was happening, but just purely from a networking level, the amount of kind of connections that you meet and those that you call upon in your career for various bits of advice or pointers about how to do something is really valuable. And now that I'm in Australia, I transferred that qualification to CPA, which is the equivalent qualification here, and I'm part of the Young Professionals Committee here in Sydney, and we actually put on events now. So having been exposed to going to the events for a number of years, I'm now outside of work, I actually try and organize these events. So and try and get key speakers to speak at them, whether they're CFOs or technology experts or so yeah, that's really interesting. So if you are part of if you are part of if you have a qualification in finance, or you're part of one of these kind of institutes that do put on these events, I really encourage you to go to them. There is a wealth of events, people, knowledge to be had there.
Definitely, that's what you just remind me. And I don't think many guest mentors on the show have talked about this, Marcus. But like, I don't know about you, but I have to say, any event I've ever really gone to, particularly these local ones, there's always something you come away with that you didn't have before. They've never been a waste of time. There's always been something good come out of it. I mean, has that been your experience, or what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And even if it's a really rubbish event that's very boring, I come away from that event knowing what doesn't work and what doesn't hit the spot with the audience. So actually, like the events that I try and organize and put on now, I try and make as interesting, as interactive, and as varied as possible. So even those bad events, I've kind of translated into what works now. And even in my career and my job, like I know how stakeholders would react to different formats of how we deliver our insights, our knowledge, our information to the business. So it's all been really useful.
Yeah, and exactly. They're still useful. And that's another important thing. So I think they're getting better. I think people are learning what's working, what isn't, how to get the insights across. And I do think they're getting better. So that's some fantastic suggestions there, what we should be checking out. And I suppose if any of our audience, Marcus, want to continue the conversation, where's the best place to connect with you at?
Sure, they can find me on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Marcus Thelwell in the world, so there shouldn't be a problem in sending messages to the wrong person. So feel free to message me on there.
Brilliant. Marcus, we're nearly there wrapping up, but any sort of parting thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, parting thoughts for the audience is you'll hear and you'll read an ever more increasing amount of information about how finance is changing, how accounting will become automated, and how there's going to be such great change. Although that is true, we should see that as an opportunity, as something that's really exciting. And in order to do that, it means that we can then drive the change from within our industry. We don't have to wait to get, for change to happen to us. We should take this opportunity and actually learn about the new technologies out there, how they can help our jobs, how they can create efficiencies. We can learn about how the business wants to use finance to get that sort of added information and value add in terms of the insights that we provide. So really take this opportunity to learn as much as possible and apply it into your career now. Don't just accept the status quo of how things are. Really be interested and inquisitive and apply these changes that are coming into our industry in ways that are both productive for you and for the business that you're working for.
That's fun. That's a fantastic way to wrap this up, Marcus. Really appreciate you coming on as a guest. And in terms of some of your key points, I really like the last one as well. Let's not accept the status quo. We're only going to get much out of our careers if we choose to engage with it, be inquisitive, try and understand our business, figure out what our stakeholders are interested in, disrupt ourselves rather than disrupt. I thought that was a very key point you made. It's very poignant for us as well. And look, I suppose wrapping it up, we have so many great opportunities in front of us. Yes, there's challenges, but to one of your bits of advice is we structure those in a constructive way. Then we'll move on, and it'll actually for not only our business's benefit but also our own. So Marcus, thank you for coming on the show today and investing your time with us. Really appreciate it.
And thank you very much for letting me on your show.
So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to know more about our guests today, their bio, and follow up on the resources mentioned during the show, you can find all the relevant links and more at sitnshow.com. There you'll also be able to get access to earlier shows, read the latest blogs. There's also an opportunity to subscribe to our newsletter, which will give you heads up as to when the next show is coming out, latest events, news, and anything that's going to be relevant to help you have a fun, rewarding, and successful career in finance and accounting. And just before you go, we really appreciate your feedback. If there's something we can do better on the show, something that's not working, or something you'd like to see, even a guest you'd like for us to invite onto the show, someone who you think might be able to benefit you more and also the rest of our community, please let me know. You can email me. I'm at andrew@sitnshow.com, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just drop me a message so I know how you found me and we can connect. And really, it's our community that'll make the show. If we keep engaging and driving each other on, we'll keep on building our strength in the numbers. When all is said and done, if we can do the numbers better and finance better, we'll create more opportunities for ourselves, our friends, our families, our communities, and our businesses. So until next time, have a good rest of the week, take care, and let's keep building our strength in the numbers.